This is another episode of Marketing Management and Money. I'm your host, Ryan Owens.
And I'm your host, Ryan Murray.
It's great to have you with us. We are excited to dive into the topic of selecting a web developer and some tips that we've picked up along the way, kind of what our experiences looked like, the good, the bad, and everything in between.
And this episode's going to be really specific. I mean, this is a very niche topic, but the reason why we're going to talk about this is there have been so many times that small businesses, everyone's like, oh, I need a website.
Yeah.
And I can't tell you how many times I've worked with small businesses that have just had issues with how to go about, and I guess it's going to be a little bit broader than picking a web developer. Like, should you develop your own website? There's some pretty cool tools out there to do that. Mm-hmm. Do you need a website? Can you get by with only social media or something like that? So I think there'll be some fun topics that we can dive into.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, there are plenty of small businesses out there that, surprisingly enough, don't need a website. They're, sure, granted, in this day and age, it's wise in a lot of circumstances to have a website, but I have worked with several, and I've even been surprised myself at how often that comes up, that it's like you can just run a social media page with a third-party paying service or downloading service or whatever, and it works. Mm-hmm. You don't need your own website, and it's so much simpler, and it's so much more efficient to do it that way. So
let's start there. What are the criteria? Like, how does a business know if they should have a website, if they shouldn't have a website? Because there are some really finite, do's and don'ts here. When you need a website and when you can get away without one. So let's be kind of specific here.
Sure. So I think one of the first and probably most important fundamental pieces of this is evaluating what your needs are in terms of what you're trying to achieve.
Right.
Are you trying to sell something? Are you trying to drive traffic? Like what is it? Are you trying to get leads? What is it that you're trying to get?
Yeah.
Right. And then the next step that I would investigate is there a third-party service or platform or whatever that already fits that need that you have, and how efficient is it? And then the next step to me is, can you do it more efficiently another way, or is their way more efficient than any other way you can do it?
Yeah. So I think the first thing that, as you were talking about that first step of evaluating your needs, the first thing that I would want to look at is the simple question of, do you need a website? I think a better question is, how are you going to represent yourself online?
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
So when you're evaluating your needs, like the answer is you have to have an online presence.
Right.
In today's marketplace, you have to be able to be found online.
Yeah.
That one's not a question.
Sure.
The question is how. And so, when you say evaluate your needs, so we're talking about stuff like, and you mentioned the e-commerce. So that's going to be where I'm going to start, is I'm going to say, am I selling anything? If I'm selling something, a website is going to be advantageous. Sometimes there are some examples of when you still can get by without a website, just by selling via other platforms, because there are some pretty powerful online platforms out there.
Yeah.
And so, the next thing that I'm going to ask myself if I'm selling something is, do I care if people are buying it directly from me, or can I just go through another service that's going to have a ton more traffic than what I'm going to have? And, and so I'm going to kind of run through that process.
And I really like this approach that you're describing. To me, it's almost a little bit of, or it cues in my mind a little bit of, not what do I want, but what don't I want, or what don't I need? Like, if you don't know exactly what you're trying to achieve, because you may not know, right? You up front, you may not know whether you're just looking for leads. You may know that you need leads, and that's one of the things, but how do you know if that's the only thing that you want for your business? And so is that something that you need to consider on when you're setting this up front, is well, yeah, I'm looking for leads now, but maybe in the future I will be selling something, or I can see that being a potential in my future, that I'm not just looking for leads, but that I'm also, like I said, trying to sell something or drive traffic somewhere, or something like that. And so your approach that I really enjoy that I'm really liking how you're describing it, is that you ask the questions, do I need this? And to me, again, it's reminiscent of this, what don't I need, rather than, because to me, a lot of times that's a lot easier to identify.
Yeah.
What don't I need? Well, I sell tractors. I definitely don't need a software selling platform. You know what I mean?
Right. I'm not going to have subscribers
exactly
as I sell tractors.
Yeah, exactly.
And
I don't know, maybe you can find a creative way to do that.
I would love to see the business that figures out a tractor subscription model like that. That would be awesome.
Dude, honestly though, with as expensive as they are, maybe you just rent it when I don't know. I don't
dude,
know.
You got
about
Uber
farming.
and Lyft.
Oh my gosh. Dude, that's like $1 million idea right there. The Lyft service of the farming community.
I love it. I love it.
Beautiful. I don't care who runs with that. I just want to have the honorable mention, right?
Yeah.
Well, you deserve it, really. Like, oh man, that's a great,
that's gonna
great
be awesome.
concept. Dang.
But, so, as you're getting into some of these questions with, e-commerce, we did an episode a couple months back. It was episode number 32. Is it easier to start a business in today's world? This is going to touch on some of those e-commerce things. Mm-hmm. And so, if any of you guys want to reference that, we really dive into some pros and cons of using third-party sites for selling. So great content there. But yeah, those are things that you're looking at. Another thing that we need to consider is, how are people connecting with you? And at the most basic level, it's contact information, old school phone number and address.
Yeah.
And, somewhere online, you need to have your phone number and your address where people, well, I guess address only if people are coming to your location, but, phone number, email address if you're completely digital.
Yeah.
Well,
I think that if people are sending you things too, right? Like
Yeah.
they need your mailing address. Like if you're shipping them product and they have the possibility of returning it. Like I've worked with businesses that's the case. It's helpful to provide that level of customer service if that's within where you land on the marketing triangle, but that's totally different rabbit hole.
Yeah.
That you can listen to in another. Anyway, pulling it back. Sorry.
So, if the address is applicable, I personally like when people at least let me know where they're located, even if I'm never going to where they are.
Right.
Like us, we are in rural Utah, but as a podcast, you're not coming to the studio. Sorry. Like, that's just how it is.
Wow.
You have been uninvited.
So prestigious. Like, you can't come. I'll let you come. Hit me up.
All right. The other Ryan is nice.
Yeah, ask for the other Ryan, and you'll get quality customer service.
But so you need to have that, and you can put that on your social media profile. You can have your contact information can be on your social media profile, but You've got to keep in mind that not everyone is utilizing that form of social media. So I'm going to pick on the big one, Facebook. And me personally, I don't care for Facebook. I don't really use it, and I know a lot of people who don't. Although there's 3 billion accounts on Facebook, and in a world of 7 billion people,
Sure,
it's pretty popular. However, if someone doesn't have Facebook, it's kind of hard for them to engage without setting up that account. Versus a website, All I have to have is an internet connection,
Yeah.
And so if you're going to go strictly social, especially if you're going a little bit more niche with with something that's only social, you got to keep in mind that not everyone is on that platform, and they might not
Yeah.
want to be on that platform. And so,
Right.
that's one drawback of
Like
going
TikTok.
Yeah. I'm on TikTok all day.
You don't even know what TikTok is.
You
didn't know TikTok was a thing until I just said TikTok. You thought it was like your grandfather clock that you have.
I knew it was a thing. I just didn't know what the thing did. It's something where the videos are too short to really notice, and so teenagers love it because it matches their short attention span.
Oh, okay.
How well did I do?
You're like 25, maybe. I might bump it up to like 35% of the way there. Maybe, if I'm feeling generous, which I'm not sure.
Yeah,
it's still early.
So anyway,
let's bring this back in. We're still like skirting this edge of, what do you need for an online presence? But
yeah,
the episode's really about how to choose a web developer, right? So say we go through all of that, where it's like we're asking all these questions and everything. You get to the point where it's like, yeah, I need a website. And it's more robust. I need it to be more robust than anything that I'm comfortable with doing, like on a Wix platform or any of those other third-party, services, or even in like a WordPress. Like even if you are a little bit familiar with WordPress or whatever, it's just like, well, I need it to do X, and I have no clue, and I'm not spending the time to do it. It's definitely worth it to me to pay somebody else to do this. So how do you go from that step of like, I need to outsource this to, wow.
So
yay, I have it, and that web developer was awesome, and I'm super stoked.
Here's the first thing, and this is, when I was sitting down with businesses and I would help them learn how to create their own website, because it's not that hard if you follow a couple principles. So principle number one, if you do not have a website, or if your website absolutely sucks, then go ahead and get what is known as a static website. It's going to use only HTML and CSS coding, and if that's over your head, I'm talking about Wix, I'm talking about Weebly, I'm talking about the GoDaddy website builder. I believe that Google has a website builder. And these are pretty much drag and drop website builders. They're going to look really professional. They're going to look good, and they're easy to do. If you have a basic level of technology, and by basic level, like how to, turn a computer on and browse the, interweb of things. If you have a basic understanding, then these drag and drop platforms are super easy to use. Now, there is a key to a drag and drop platform, and that is limit it to 3 to 5 pages.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
If you're going to go beyond that, a drag and drop platform's probably not the best option, because what's going to happen is you're going to want to start adding functionality that just really doesn't work. It's more right. complex than what you're doing, looking at trying to do. And so if you're keeping it simple, 3 to 5 pages, and map it out before you start building it.
That's kind of where I was going to go, is like, to me, that's kind of a critical point in a business, or a critical determining factor on, in what type of website a business is going to have. If you have more than 3 to 5 pages, either I've run into 2 scenarios, and I'd love to hear your experience on this, Ryan.
Sure.
I've run into 2 scenarios. A, which is the more common scenario, is that they have way more than they need, and often a lot of that is repetitive, and so it's bloated, and not only that, but it's super messy.
Okay, let's be a little bit clear what that means. When you're saying bloated and super messy, we're talking about too much text and just poor organization.
Yeah, and even
irrelevant images,
or 2 separate pages that either are identical by accident or on purpose sometimes, which has happened and doesn't make sense. I'm sorry. Or, it's like it will be just close enough information that it doesn't make sense to have 2 pages that basically say the exact same thing. You know what I mean? So it's like, it's just, you can trim the fat. So that's what I would look at. Can you trim the fat? If you have more than 3 to 5 pages, can you trim the fat? If you can, then it's easy to go with a Weebly or a Wix or whatever, WordPress if you can. If you determine, and I think this is where you're headed, like if you determine that, it definitely bare bones needs more than 3 to 5 pages, like those are critical, important elements, it's time to start looking.
Yeah.
If you can't do it yourself.
Now I need to make a technical distinction here, because when you're saying WordPress, for our listeners, I want them to know that you're referencing WordPress.com, because that's going to be the drag and drop, static builder. WordPress.org is actually an open source PHP based that's going to allow you to do a lot more coding. Sorry for that
was a great
technical
clarification.
deviation there.
Yep. No, you're good. I totally assumed.
But and so if you're going beyond the 3 to 5 pages, either take the time to learn it, and you can learn it. It's not overly complicated, or you're going to hire someone.
Yep.
Now, let's assume that you're ready to cross that bridge to hire someone. I see so many times that small businesses and web developers just don't see eye to eye.
Yeah.
And some of the mistakes that I want to talk about is, first off, you'll get web developers who don't know what they're doing, but you'll also get web developers who do know what they're doing, but they're really expensive. And, you're paying for a Cadillac when, a little Toyota Corolla is going to get you there just fine. And so understand what you need. And that's kind of why at the first of the episode, I wanted to take the time and say, lay out some things, that 3-step strategy that you put in place. And if you want to follow a different strategy, fine. Like, that's not
the point is to get clear.
Yeah.
Like very vividly clear on your vision of what this is going to turn into. And because otherwise you're going to end up, and not to say that like everybody wants the Cadillac, it's like, I want the bigger and the better model. I want the extra features and the extra options. Well, that's not always the best thing. It's like if you are taking your car off-road in the desert and going through some deep ditches and over some rocky terrain and stuff, I don't care what kind of Cadillac it is. You don't want it. You know what I mean?
You want the Jeep.
You want the Jeep. You want the 4Runner. You want the FJ Cruiser kind of a deal, right? But the opposite is true. If you have this, you have to appeal to like what am I trying to say? Like a higher class customer base.
Well, there's high class, but there's also that you've got to have a high level of functionality, like a complicated e-commerce store. Then
you do need something that's more like a Cadillac, or maybe you do need a Ferrari. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But also, you may just need like you said, a Toyota Corolla, and you could get the Ferrari, but does it really make sense for your average person who's driving an hour commute each way back and forth to work to be driving a Ferrari every day? No, it doesn't.
Yeah.
It's fun. It's cool. It's exciting, but
Yeah. And so I had this experience. I was going to put together some online ad. It was an online ad company.
Okay.
And we went and outsourced our web services to a company, and I decided, I'm like, I'm going to go with a company, not an individual, because I want to have the reliability of a company.
Yeah.
And they sucked. They absolutely sucked.
That's why I was like instantly laughing.
I'm
sorry, man, that sucks.
I wanted, and in a previous episode, I kind of tell that story, but I'll just sum it up with this. It got to the point that I wanted to take legal action against them because they did such a bad job.
Yeah.
And so we fired that company, and I hired an independent he was supposed to be a WordPress expert. And so he went through and found out that I was paying him to just plug in some basic templates. Like, he didn't know how to code, so he was just doing copy and paste kind of stuff. And so I fired him. And then I hired this other guy. Now, he was good. He was very good. But he knew this language that was so obscure. It was this weird coding language. And so he took all, we at that point our site was in WordPress, and he took all of it out of WordPress, put it into this obscure
like
coding
Fortran.
language. Yeah. And then he came to us and he said, "Hey, I got another gig, so I'm going to quit." And, he was professional about it, and I appreciate it. He gave some notice, and he kind of buttoned us up, and we're like, okay, that's good. And there I was. I'm like, okay, I need to find someone. The website, it's good, but I can't make any changes because I don't know how to code in this thing. And I went through person after person after person trying to find someone who could code in that language. And everyone's like, I know of that language, but I can't really code it.
Brutal, man.
And so we ended up just shutting down the whole thing.
Oh gosh.
Because we kept having problem after problem after problem with all of these web developers.
Yeah.
And so going through that experience, plus subsequently consulting several other businesses going through that experience, I learned several things about picking a web developer. So the first thing is, when you're looking at their portfolio, don't just look at their portfolio. Like, dig deep.
Yep.
Talk to other customers that they have. Like, we should have done that, and we should have spent a lot more time doing our homework and finding out from those customers. Because there are things, like, the portfolio is always going to look pretty, right? But you don't know their response time in the portfolio. Mm-hmm. You don't know their troubleshooting abilities by looking at the portfolio. Like, they're only showing you the best work.
Right.
Yep. And so that would be one major thing that we learned.
And I 100% agree with that being the first step. And I would look for two things in checking out their portfolio. Number one, if in their portfolio everything looks exactly the same, that's probably not a good sign. That means that oftentimes that'll mean that the web developer, and this happens with like graphic designers and anybody creative, right? If they can't get out of their own head, out of their own space, and put themselves in your shoes and what you need, then it's always going to be kind of the same meal that gets served, right?
Yeah. They're really good at one trick.
They're really good at sushi, but if you want a burger, they're going to give you a really good sushi burger. And so that's number one. Number two is, if they are, I absolutely agree with asking for or some people that they can, or you can speak to that they've previously worked with. Mm-hmm. Some of those people that show up in their portfolio, and if they're hesitant to give that to you, that's a big red flag right there, because anybody who's proud of their work, anybody who's proud of working with the people that they have worked with, it will freely, give that information over. They may say like, hey, you know what? I'm happy to give it, but let me check with them and make sure it's okay with them first. Sure. And that's a respectable thing. But if they're like, well, I don't know, man.
I don't give out the names of people I work with.
Yeah. It's like, it's on their website that shows right there in your portfolio. So anyway, those are it.
Yeah. So those are a couple key things that we learned. Some of the other key things that we learned was understanding what we were paying for upfront. Mm-hmm. And this was our mistake. We came in with big ideas and poor plans. And that's always an expensive way to go.
Oh,
So
yeah.
if you're sitting down with a web developer, even a quality web developer, and you're sitting down with them and you're just like, okay, so I need an e-commerce page, and then I'm going to have the forum, and then we're going to have like the whole training, you know, the university where everyone can go and they can click onto the university and they can connect with other people and you know, and then and like you've got all these ideas, and as this web developer is doing it, there's like, great, if you're paying the bill on this,
Yeah,
you know,
right?
20 grand later, I'm happy to build this for you.
Yeah, because there are several different ways to do e-commerce. There are several different ways to do a university or
You know,
a learning center or whatever, you know, and some of them do get pricey.
Yeah. And so we should have had better plans up front of specifically what we wanted, not just, I need an e-commerce. I'm selling ad space, and so I need to be able to be mobile. Like that was crap. Everyone needs to be mobile.
Right.
Why am I telling them that? You know?
What exactly
Yes.
do you need it to be mobile for? What exactly do you need e-commerce for?
Yeah. What is the process that the customer will go through?
Do you need to be able to add, you know, discounts, you know, like coupon codes kind of things? Do you have to have that option? If not, you know, those are things to consider.
Yeah.
Because some platforms offer those, others don't. Some require some of those needs require special programming, others don't.
Yeah. And so the final thing that I want to bring up before we kind of wrap up this episode is that most of this stuff is not unique to you.
Yep.
If you are, you know, a massive player, you know, I'm talking the big multi-billion-dollar websites, then obviously you're going to have a team of programmers that are, you know, custom coding everything.
Yeah.
But for 99% of small businesses, you can use some code that's already been generated. Sometimes you have to pay for it, and that's okay. You know, it's not bad to purchase quality written code and quality written plugins and programs and things like that. But you would be amazed at how much is already out there.
Oh, yeah.
That is going to work really well for you. You might have to adjust and tweak a little bit, but like it's already written code.
Mm-hmm. And the developers who use that aren't shy about saying, hey, I'm doing this, I'm buying this plugin for this reason.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's not that they're trying to cheat the system. So you talked about earlier how that developer, you found out that that's what they were doing, you know, and that's kind of a shady way to go about it.
Right.
I know a developer that uses plugins and things like that, but they're very open with that up front and saying
well, they weren't exactly using plugins. They didn't know how to code.
Okay.
And so they were trying to make it look like they were smarter than they were.
By grabbing other people's code and things like
Yes.
that. Well, but still, the concept is there. Like, if a web developer, regardless of whether they, like, even if they do know how to code, a lot of times they'll still do that. But they know exactly what they're looking for and why they are using that bit of code or that plugin or that, you know, whatever. And then they'll be open about it and they'll say, you know, I'm using this because of this and this and this. And
this works really well. I've got experience with it.
Yeah, and they're not going to charge you, it took me 7 hours to code this. I definitely just pulled that from the internet.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
You know, it's tricky business when you are trying to find a web developer. For whatever reason, I have seen small businesses struggle with this time and time and time again. So this is an area I definitely would slow down, do my homework, research, get referrals, get recommendations, and, you know, like there are good developers out there.
Oh, for sure.
But there are bad developers out there too, a lot of them. So just be careful when you're out there shopping around, and hopefully you got something from this episode. If you want to give us your feedback and tell us what you think, you can find us online at www.marketingmanagementmoney.com or at Twitter at MMMSmallBiz. That is BIZ. Until next time.
Ciao.